If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
That vulnerability, in my opinion, is what really is. It creates real strength.
It does.
It creates real, authentic strength because the vulnerability is what breaks the walls down.
Right.
It's what makes tough men that don't talk about feelings vulnerable men that shed tears together and realize this is what we needed.
Before we get to part 2 of the Don't Hide the Scars podcast with Tony Hoffman, we want to thank these following sponsors for supporting Parents and Addicts in Need. Ashton Lighting. Whether you're choosing a new lighting style or needing to repair your favorite desk lamp, James Ashton Lighting is the premier destination. The choices are endless for manufactured lighting, custom lighting, outdoor lighting, commercial lighting, and home decor. They will guide you every step of the way, from providing the perfect lighting style to installation. EECU, Educational Employees Credit Union. Unlike many other types of financial institutions, they're a not-for-profit financial institution solely owned by their members. There are no stockholders. Each EECU member is an owner in equal standing and has the right to attend the annual meeting and vote for the board of directors and supervisory committee.
Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Tony Hoffman, thank you for joining founder of Parents and Addicts in Need, Flindt Andersen, and myself, Jason LaChance.
Maybe a month ago, had a guy walk in, and he walked into this office when we were upstairs about 12 years ago. And he walks in, the guy's like 6'6", he weighed about 110 pounds, he looked like a giant zipper, he was all gothed out, and he was heroin and meth, and honest to God, my first reaction myself is, what am I going to do with this guy, and started working with him. We got him into treatment, and I mean, it was a long road, and he walked in here about 6 weeks ago, and he said, I just wanted to say thank you, man, and it's those things, right, that look, it's not about me. It's not even about you. It's about connecting with people, right? And hoping that thing that we say that is going to reach that one person. I've always had the philosophy: if I can save one person, then I've done my job.
That's it.
It's not about numbers. Even though we could both sit here and go, you know what? We've helped a lot of people, right? But it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
It goes so much deeper than that, and to get that back is that's the reward, man.
That's the biggest high I've ever felt.
That's the biggest high I have ever felt. And I was somewhere just within the last couple of days, and I know, I was talking to a doctor here in town yesterday, and I was doing an interview, and the doctor's telling me, he said, yeah, there was a guy that I was talking to, Flindt, a couple of days ago. He said, and he used to attend your parent groups about 9 years ago because his dad was an alcoholic, and he goes, and he just wanted me to tell you that thank you, because his dad's doing great, and he got through that. I don't even remember the guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's fine.
And that's okay.
I think that sometimes that's great.
That's even better.
Because you're just doing the work.
You're just doing the work, right?
And it's the power of that ripple effect, right?
It really is.
And it can be as more simple, I think, than you think. Is something Flindt knows this, but I stole from you. I've got my unfortunately transient individual as an addict, Arthur, that I talk to every day, and he's amazed. He doesn't remember that I remember his name, but every time I say his name, you can see something different come out in Arthur, other than what I'm going to assume is probably when he's sober, he's sweet, but he'll still have hallucinations, you know. And there's some severe trauma that is clearly there because he continues to fight the same fight, stating that 2 adult individuals stopped sexually abusing me. So there's clearly something there. But it makes a difference in his day when someone cares, buys him a Gatorade, whatever it is. It's the same as holding a door open or the shoe challenge. There's I don't know if you know Dr. Rob Kelly. You guys aren't too far from each other. He's in San Antonio. He gave me this shoe challenge.
Dr. Rob Kelly's
That's
great.
a long way. That's like 6 hours, 5 hours.
You got to get to know Dr. Rob.
Well,
okay. This cat is cool.
You'll love him.
Yeah.
But he gave me the shoe challenge. It's like 10 strangers. Preferably goes, you with the sex and love addiction, let's not compliment women's shoes because then you're going to start to intrigue a little bit. So 10 guys compliment their shoes.
I could do that easy.
Yeah,
right.
I look at shoes before I look at eyes.
Exactly.
I want to see what kind of sneakers you got on before what you look like.
Right.
Should I test you? What shoes am I wearing today, Tony? But it works. He's like, I guarantee you just say, hey, man,
nice
cool
shoes.
kicks.
Yeah.
And then walk away, look back. They'll look back at you with a smile.
Sure.
And it was like, son of a bitch.
And my favorite thing about the mechanics of that is every time I ever got high or changed the way that I felt, when the peak of that feeling went away, I was gifted with guilt.
Oh, yeah.
I was gifted with shame. I was gifted with a mechanism that was completely the opposite of what the peak of that drug or substance made me feel.
Right.
When I compliment somebody or do something nice for somebody or sacrifice a normal life to be on the road to help people, I don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
I don't feel shame doing what I'm doing.
I love that. We were given the gift of guilt and the gift of shame. That was a gift. You bet.
Sure.
I mean,
it turned out to be one because I got so sick of feeling it.
Oh, absolutely.
Then I felt the opposite, and it was like, I'm just going to keep doing this.
You bet.
In all of my affairs.
You bet.
Is to just try and live with rigorous honesty, because at a level of rigorous honesty, there is no rebound of shame and guilt.
There isn't. And now other people may not like your rigorous honesty.
Sure,
but
that's okay.
But guess what? Too bad.
And you learn that's okay.
That is okay, because guess what? I can lay my head down on that pillow at night with no guilt, no shame, none of it. And if somebody else doesn't like, guess what? Too bad.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be rude, but saying that, just too bad.
No, I have posted on it many times on my social media, is that you're not for everybody.
Right.
I had a group that I canceled in Louisiana. I'm at my point now in my career where I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Yeah. And they had a suicide recently, and they didn't want me to mention the suicide part of my story, the suicidal ideation of my early teenage years. And I said, this isn't the right fit.
Yeah.
And they said, but can't you just leave that part out?
No.
And I said, I tell my story, but can't you leave that piece out? And they said, we don't want you to not tell your story. And I said, if I leave that out, that's me not telling my story.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand what you guys are trying to do. My hope is that the kids are being met with what they need in this really serious time. But I'm going to have to make the decision that this is no longer a right fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to do what you want me to do for money.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need, because there's the guilt there.
There is.
Right? Like, my mission wasn't built on a speaking career. It was helping people. Then it became a
Correct.
speaking career that's paid me well. So if I start doing it for money, there is going to be a rebound
There will be.
of guilt.
Yeah.
I went there just to take the $6,200.
Right.
That's not right,
That-
because I don't need it.
Right.
I've been fortunate enough to live my mission, my truth, and God has taken care of every aspect of my life. And I truly believe that just because you're not using a substance doesn't mean that you can't do something else with the wrong motive or intention.
Absolutely.
Right? The motive behind the motives, the room teach us. Right. That there's a guilt and shame effect on the rebound of that.
Right. But how cool is it to both of us to be able to do what we love, and to do it well, and to do it with the right motives and the right reasons. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is just like with that scenario, we were talking with Randy.
Oh, Andersen.
Yes. And he's a speaker and
TED Talk guy.
Right.
Okay.
And he's in the same boat now. He's been told by school districts in particular, you have to soften your story. All right, because we just have to have it soft. And he's going, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to soften my story either for anybody that I'm talking to. Yeah. It's appropriate, right? As yours is. Mm-hmm. It's all appropriate. Mm-hmm. But there's no way that I would ever say, no, I'm not going to talk about that. That is part of the whole recovery thing.
Well, it's awareness.
It's awareness.
Awareness
Right.
means
We're not trying to hide this under the rug anymore, guys.
Right.
This has to come out.
the realities of what can
Right.
happen.
And what I would like to say to some of these people is that you are not helping the situation by even trying to curtail us from saying what we need to say today.
Yep.
If I left out, I did we had talked just prior to me doing it the day before when I spoke at those 2 classrooms. Mm-hmm. There was one young lady that when I talked about the sexual molestation and the extreme exposure to hardcore pornography at a very young age, broke down. But the teacher let me know that's the first time that girl's asked for help. So you leave it out. As someone that went there, thought about it many times, taking my own life, you leave that out, I don't get to connect with you.
Right.
And it's just a shame.
That vulnerability, in my opinion, is what really it creates real strength.
It does.
It creates real, authentic strength because the vulnerability is what breaks the walls down.
Right.
It's what makes tough men that don't talk about feelings, vulnerable men that shed tears together and realize this is what we needed.
Yeah.
Right. And now we come together as real men and support each other's emotions. We stand there next to our friends. We support those that are falling. And that's what community is. But you can't have that if everybody's perfect.
Exactly.
You can't. You know,
and you would be also surprised, and I'm going to say this story because you never know who you are affecting in this. And I remember speaking at Buchanan. I've told you this story before. Speaking at Buchanan, this is, again, I'm losing time of track, 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there, and before the presentation, there was a young man with cerebral palsy that came up to me.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And I could barely understand him. Right, but he came up and was talking to me, and I'm giving it everything. I mean, eyeball to eyeball, and we're just kind of connecting, right? And so I'm about ready to start. You know, everybody's walking in, and this young man sits down in the front row. I am 5, 6, 7 minutes into it, and this kid starts crying, wailing. And you have to keep going, right? Yeah. I mean, you have to keep going. A couple teachers took him out, and so I was speaking again in the afternoon. So I was in the teacher's lunchroom, and the teacher that took him out was there. And I asked her. I said, how is he? I said, is he okay? You know, what's the problem? And she goes, oh, he's fine. She said he was crying for you. Hmm. Well, I lost it right in the teacher's lunchroom. I mean, right there. But it was a connection that you and I and you and everybody else that we have with people. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Okay, what anything. It's that connecting, and we never know who.
Yep.
We're connecting with, and and a lot of times I don't even need to know.
No.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt, Andersen, and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery. To proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
I think that real genuine character doesn't care.
Right. Right.
You're not looking at what the normal person is looking for. Yeah. Right? It's a void of anything that society says to look for. It's a heart thing. It's an empathy thing. It's the soul, spirit, the where the pain is. Right? I always want to know people's story.
You bet.
I want to know where the pain is at.
You bet.
Because in that pain, we have a lot of relatability, and we learn a lot about who you are. A lot. Like what you've been able to overcome, what you've experienced, how you process that. That was one thing with my podcast was it was like a therapy session.
Right.
Like I want to break you down.
Right.
I want to know what childhood felt like, what your experiences looked like. I don't care about your accolades. I don't care about what you're doing right now.
I want to know about your awards on the wall.
Right. I want you to tell me what you did when you didn't think you could. Mm-hmm. Underneath all of those experiences, what was there?
Right.
I think that's interesting because that doing the podcasting that I've done and all the people we've spoken to here. The other one, be it celebrity, household name or not, that was the most intriguing thing. At the end of the day, you know, we're all people of circumstances. You know, we all bleed when you cut us, and we are all can be susceptible to this disease of addiction. You know,
no question,
and mental health struggles. And gosh, what do we do, guys? Just keep preaching to our lungs give out.
That's what I guess I'm going to do.
That's what I'm going to do.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, you know, since I got into recovery, I'm happy.
Yeah. I
can truly say that. And that doesn't mean that I haven't had those dark moments where I've had to look down a very dark tunnel and say, is there light at the end of this? You know, but something just said, keep going. Anytime I've been there and every time I get out, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. And I love what I get to do. Like Flindt said, that's something that I can't ever trade in.
Right.
And I don't see why I'm supposed to stop at this point.
Right. And one of the things I say is, you know, I've already been to hell. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing until the good Lord says, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
People say to me all the time, whether it's on Facebook, in person, you're still telling your story? I recently had somebody from Fresno say, you know, you're a very successful entrepreneur now. You're not that person anymore. Like, you need to be speaking to business people. And it's like, I don't want to talk about making money. You know, like, what? There's other people that are better than that at me. Like, I'm not passionate about making money. Right. Sure, I've done well at that, but money is a tool to serve others and provide what I need, right? It's not what drives me. Right. And I was like, you know, you haven't heard me speak in like 6 years. Like, the work that I'm doing now is more important than it's ever been.
Right.
When you heard me, I was telling my story.
Right.
Like, now I'm using my story to connect the dots for the people that are listening on what's happening.
It's so interesting you say that, because I do the same thing. People want to hear my story, and excuse me, and so I give them like a taste.
Sure.
Now, all right, because you know, everybody knows I'm in recovery. Everybody knows since 2001 and blah blah blah, and Flindt did this and Flindt did that, you know, during his heyday, and and at times where it's appropriate.
Sure.
But that story portion has been cut way down because there's so many other issues now, so many more important issues to talk about. The story's still relatable, and you have to throw a little bit of it in there just so everybody understands where you're coming from. But there's so much more out here now that needs to be discussed. The mental health side of this thing, harm reduction, you know, treatment, whatever it is. There's just many more issues that need to be tackled.
To me, that is the evolvement of recovery.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
if you're 10 years, 15 years into this process, and we're still glamorizing the story, I think we're still at a place where we may need to take a step back. Yeah. And sit with yourself for a little bit, and ask yourself: is the daily life of what you did important? Where's the value in that for others?
Right.
Because we learn we only get to keep what we give away, and we can't give away stories. You know what I mean? Like, me going to the Olympics is great. It's only great now to me if I tie in, while I'm telling this story, the mechanics that help them.
Right.
Understand themselves better,
exactly,
their parents better, their community better,
right,
the individuals that are locked in prisons and jails better, and change the way we treat those individuals. That's the only value my story has now, but that's the evolvement.
Well, and I think as we get older too, I mean, you know, whether Jason believes so or not, I have calmed down quite a bit.
And I would say so too. In this, we're probably going to go on an hour, and I would say that Flindt has really toned it down a little bit. I
think it's your vibe and energy, because I can still get pissed off about it. He's been really calm.
I've been really calm today, but I get fired up big time. But
sure,
and everybody knows that. And so can you, when the time is right.
Sure.
When that time is right, and I have no problem with it. I mean, it's sometimes a good fight needs to happen.
Sure.
I mean, it's just that simple. But again, as we're getting older, I mean, you just kind of, you slow down a little bit. You look at things a little bit differently. what's more important, what's not. But like I said, if there's a time to yell and get upset and be in a dogfight, then you be in the dogfight. They're just not coming as often.
Sure.
And I don't want to do them as often, to be
Sure.
honest with you.
Well, I know you mentioned harm reduction, and that's when I speak to healthcare systems. I get asked a lot about harm reduction.
Right.
MAT and harm reduction. You'd be surprised. MAT is still a very controversial topic. It's not widely accepted depending on what part of the country you're in. In California, MAT's all over the place. In the Midwest, still parts, and South, MAT is not necessarily widely accepted because 12-step programs are typically all that's available in areas that don't have huge metros, right?
Right.
We have created a society in major metros in which it's a human's right to be able to do what they want. Live on the street, piss on your business, shit in your gutters right outside your business, because they've had some type of life or upbringing that has been traumatic. And I will agree with that. Those that are sleeping on the street and occupying, especially the state of California as our homeless population, have likely been through some stuff, like one of the people that was at my treatment center, tortured by his stepmom, tied to a bed, air conditioner turned all the way down, stripped naked. If the kid went to sleep, she poured ice cold water on him. Right? These individuals have experienced life in ways that most of us don't want to. They've felt no validation at home. They were probably kicked out of schools because schools didn't quite understand what was happening at this time. And then they went to society and also didn't receive validation. They've taught themselves how to survive in the streets. Mm-hmm. The struggle I have is that the pendulum has swung so far left that there's no accountability.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We just want to keep them alive. When I first got into this speaking thing, we were getting away from putting people in jail. Locking people up doesn't fix the problem, right? The pendulum was right, very conservative. Now we let them all out, and it swung so far left that what I tell people is, you hate them, and you hate them. You put them away and don't want to deal with them. That's hate. You let them do whatever they want, and that's hate.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because if you let them do whatever they want, you have no moral responsibility to help them through a situation you may not be able to fix.
Right.
Yep.
So what does that mean to me? What it means to me is if we recognize that there are individuals that we may not be able to fix, we may not be able to see the other side of their addiction or their mental health struggles, because there are acute mental health struggles that need extreme medical attention, is that our moral responsibility should be to create systems in which they get to shoot dope with doctors and nurses around them. But if you leave here, no bueno. You get in trouble. You don't piss in front of our businesses. You don't pitch tents on our sidewalks, because as a functioning society, that's not what we do. Yeah. We create an area, a safe space in which you can do this. But if you're an acute mental health patient, we build you institutions. You don't get to wander the street, yell at people, throw things at people, spin in circles, talk to yourself all day long, and sleep in freezing cold weather with no blanket. We're better than that. We should be building institutions for these individuals that Reagan had, that we got rid of, and we should be taking care of them for the rest of their life. That should be our moral duty. To me, that's responsible harm reduction. It's beyond Narcan. It's beyond fentanyl test strips. It's what is our moral responsibility to take care of an individual that can't take care of themselves?
Yeah. Look, I agree with you on taking care of that mental health patient. I really do. I do take issue with, quote, for the lack of a better term, the shooting galleries.
Sure.
Because I remember there was a Assemblywoman, Susan Eggman. We'll just say that. I can't pronounce her whole name. And she wanted to have these little clinics where people would go in during 8 and 5 and be able to use and clean needles and all of this. But my comeback to her was, well, what about before 8 o'clock and after 5 p.m.? What are you going to allow them to stay there 24 hours a day, because now you have to feed them, you have to take care of their medical needs, right? You just want to open up these 4 walls for these people to come in. And if you're truly looking at the addict, and I can only look at myself as an addict, When I was a practicing drug addict and somebody were allowing me to use somewhere free with clean drugs from 8 to 5, you can bet my ass was in there. Okay? But let me tell you something. Before 8 and after 5, I'm still doing anything and everything I can to get whatever drugs I need to use, whatever I needed to do to get money to buy them. So that, to me, that's really not solving a problem. But
Sure.
again, going back to the mental health side of it, agree with you 110%.
And I absolutely see both sides of that coin, right? But I also think that that's where we create more responsible systems, right? What does a safe injection site actually look like? Is it just a free shooting gallery? Because chances are, I don't believe in most cases, they're not overflown. Because right now, it's basically, you could use drugs in California with no consequence in the street.
Right, you can just do it right on the
So
street corner.
why would I go to a safe injection site?
Yeah.
So it's my belief that we'll round up many of them if we create a more responsible harm reduction system that says if we catch you in the wild using drugs, there are consequences. You go to jail, and as you go to jail, you stay a part of a system, a treatment that focuses on your rehabilitation, figuring out what that looks like. Even if we had safe injection sites, it should still be, you can come here so much, but this is what the pathway looks like while you're in here.
Yeah.
Because I have learned with my athletes, most individuals are not self-starters.
Right.
They need somebody to tell them, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is what we do.
Right.
And sometimes we don't question the process. We just do it and trust that the person directing the doing of what needs to be done actually has my back.
Yeah.
And through that, you find out, shit, some people actually care.
Right.
We
And
all,
no.
We all could use a Mr. Miyagi, right?
Hey, the teachers I love the most and the coaches I love the most were the ones I hated.
Right. Absolutely.
When I was under their wing and when I became an adult, I realized, wait a minute.
They were right.
They were the only ones that actually cared.
Yeah.
The ones that just let me come through the classroom and didn't say anything and didn't want me and push me to hold myself at a higher level of accountability, they didn't care.
Yeah.
They weren't the ones that cared. It was the one that had high expectations of what I should be doing.
Well, and again, I'm just going to take it a little step further here. It's just like in what we do, right? I can't tell you how many addicts over the years have hated my guts because I've taken the hard line approach to all of this.
Me and Matt were just talking about this.
Right?
I said Flindt is old school.
Old school, baby.
And it's
Okay?
not a bad thing.
No,
it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's
Right.
It might not be for everybody, but you know what?
Exactly. But guess what? I can't tell you how many of those people have come back
Yeah.
and said thank you. You know, and again, not to pump me up, but the fact is that, yeah, there's some of us that are still old school here. And again, the biggest part of harm reduction to me is abstinence.
Yeah.
You know, now, again, there are people out there that, I'm sorry, they're not going to ever get clean.
No, unfortunately,
that's
they're
the
not.
other side of this coin. You know, they're just not. So I think we have to take almost each case individually.
Sure.
You know,
As it should be.
as it should be. Treatment, again, I'm not as old school as you might think. Treatment is not a stamped out process for everybody.
Right.
Different treatments work for different individuals
Absolutely.
all day long. I'm the first one to admit that. Some people don't like 12 steps. Some people don't like the next one and the next one. But we at least have to start figuring out what those are and
Sure.
be able to reach these people, to give them the opportunity to do this.
Absolutely. To expand on harm reduction, the homeless population and what we're doing to try and curtail the overdoses there versus what we're trying to do on the preventative side with students and parents are almost wildly different.
Yeah.
Right? Tomorrow I'm going to be speaking in Kingsburg, and you're going to hear me encourage every parent to understand how to use Narcan by seeing Flindt, getting Narcan, and making sure that when your young individual goes off to college, they have Narcan in their backpack, their
Absolutely.
purse, or their car at all times.
Right.
Because today's world that they live in is no longer what it was when we were out there, Jason. It's wildly different than when you were out there.
Yep.
And I think we all sitting at this table can say, I don't think we'd be alive in today's world with fentanyl.
We wouldn't.
I was too reckless.
Right.
I bought dope from a guy on Blackstone and Shields, and it was in his ass.
Right.
And I said, is this stuff good? Because I'm going to put it in a needle.
Right.
And he said, yeah, bro, it's good.
It's good.
Sweet.
I'm all in.
I'm all in. Went back to Motel 6.
Right.
Cooked it up and put it in my arm. Like, look, I get chills thinking about how stupid I was.
Look, I was not a proponent of Narcan 10 years ago.
I know. Neither
Right?
one of us were.
Neither one of us were. Because we're sitting there going, well, why would anybody want to get clean? Today, it's a must. It's an absolute must. In fact, they've come out with a new one called Clidaxo, which is an 8 milligram. And it's not available to the general public yet. They're starting to make some noise that way.
Is it longer lasting? Is that what it is? Because I know Narcan is a very short stint.
It's very short. It's short acting. There's still a lot of ifs out there about it, but it's on the market. I mean, it's on the market. But they're going through the whole selling stage now before it's going to be free.
I'm all in on let's stop people from dying.
Absolutely.
And I'm all in for that. But like I say, there's a responsible way to execute harm reduction.
Yeah.
On the parent side, hey, look, that school I spoke at in Maryland, a community talk where one of their students died.
Right.
You know how many parents showed up?
How many? 6?
2.
0.
Really?
The mayor
Doesn't surprise me.
The mayor was there.
Yeah.
All the board of directors, chamber of commerce, the school district leaders. The mayor got up there and was like, I am disgusted.
Livid, disgusted, all of it.
And you know what they blamed it on? PTA meetings. I said, until we make this mandatory.
Exactly.
Until mental health and substance use education is a part of back to school.
Right.
And I don't care if it's 4 waves of 300.
Right.
Whatever it is, one parent needs to be there, trained to use Narcan, understand how mental health and trauma are connected to substance use, so we can better treat those who struggle with addiction instead of alienate them.
Right.
That we're not going to see this get better. It's going to get worse. And you know what she said? It will never be mandatory.
No, and
I thought to myself, well, you sure it won't? It sure won't here.
No,
because if that's your thought process, it won't be.
It won't. Look, I even had a thought at one time. All right, now I'm getting pissed. Okay,
there we go. Come on, Flindt.
Where your kid could not go into junior high without parents hearing this in the 6th grade.
Sure.
You could not move from 8th grade into 9th grade without parents hearing this message. And your kid cannot graduate from high school until the kids and the parents hear about it. Because 15,000 probably more now, 15,000 college freshmen drop out of university every year in their fall semester due to substance abuse. That means they didn't start in September and started, dropping out in November. That means they started in high school and junior high.
Yeah.
Will that ever happen in the state of California? I doubt it.
Right.
I doubt it. But that's how drastic that we have to be with these parents because, Tony, you've been around a long time. I've been around a long time. That's our biggest challenge is speaking to parents about this.
It really is. And you know what? People call me and they say, we want to do a community talk and they want to put their money into a community talk. And I say, is that really where you want to put your money?
Right.
I'll do it because sometimes we can get a lot of parents to show up and it's a major impact.
Right.
But I almost talk them out of it because I don't want you to spend money to bring me and 5 people show up.
Right.
When you could bring me in and I can speak to 1,000 kids.
Exactly.
And everybody had to hear me because it's mandatory.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're not at a place where we are focused on not so much this is going to happen to my child and these are the scary, ghostly things that could happen. It's just understanding the climate and the situation that we currently live in the United States. And this is what we do to arm ourselves better as a society. Right. When I go to parts of Maryland, everybody has Narcan.
Right.
Parts of New Jersey, everybody has Narcan. The whole cities go purple in September.
I know, you told me that. That's great.
It's one of the coolest things ever. The cop cars, the lights, the high rises, like everything turns purple.
Right.
Because everybody is aware of what's happening. And Flindt and I have been saying this a long time, a very long time. If fentanyl gets here, and when it does, it is going to rip our community apart. It's not a matter really of if, it's when.
We've known about this
and we were 5 years behind.
Right.
People would say, why do you think it's not prevalent? I don't have that answer.
Exactly.
I don't have that answer. Mexico is 7 hours from here. Right. I don't know why it's not here, but it's every community I speak at on the East Coast and in the Midwest, they're dropping like flies.
Well, and again, I believe that's because in the early days of fentanyl, it was China as well, but it was also Russia that was shipping that into the eastern seaboard.
Got it.
That's where it first originated. And again, you and I were both talking about that stuff then because, look, it just stands to reason if it's going to hit the East Coast, it's going to hit the West Coast at some point. Yep. It's a matter of when, right? And of course, now it's here and we're not ready for it like we're never ready for anything.
And unfortunately, more kids will be the statistic of an opioid overdose before more parents start becoming proactive in all parts of our community. Right. And how do we stop and slow down the drug overdose rate? Right. Because the mental health thing that's leading kids down that path is going to continue to get worse. Schools are underfunded. Yeah. Me and Matt just saw a school that I left there praying to myself. These poor workers are really pouring their heart into these young men and women and individuals to try and give them something they need, but they don't have enough help.
Right. Yeah. Right.
They needed a team of 20, 30 people. Right. She's one for 120 people. God. Yeah. And she was supposed to see him, what did she say, bi-weekly? You can't do that.
No.
The school I spoke at, it was one for almost 1,000 students. They had one counselor that they could go to. They had more people, full-time football coaches, than people to go and speak to.
Yeah.
When they're having an issue.
Well, again, this is a war, and DEA knows it is. We know it is. And when you're fighting that dragon, you don't start by cutting off the tail. You start by cutting off the head. And until we have that mentality, we're gonna keep rolling in the shit, all right? Until we actually take charge, and I know this has gotten me in trouble in the past, but again, I don't care. Look, we want to make a dent. We go in with guns blazing.
Sure.
I mean, come on. I mean, nobody wants that. I certainly don't want that.
Sure.
But it is at that point. Sure. Where the United States, as powerful as we are, if we don't nip this thing and now, we're screwed.
Sure.
We are totally screwed. Everybody I've talked to from here to Washington, D.C. says the same thing. This is China's covert war against us. They are dropping tons and tons of mini little bombs in fentanyl pills, but it's going to turn out to be one big nuclear one at one time.
Sure.
And that's what is happening here. And is there going to be collateral damage when we go in somewhere? Of course there is, and I feel bad about that. But you know what? These other China, Mexico, they certainly don't give a shit about us.
No.
And now it's time to stand up and fight back.
And I would challenge that. I would also say that it's a war of two fronts.
Yes.
Right. It's a war of two fronts. The other war is securing funding for mental health.
Of course.
Schools are still largely the same as they were as me and Matt went to 25 years ago or however long ago it was when we graduated. I graduated in 2002, 20 years ago. Right. Nothing has changed. Biden gave $250 million more to mental health support through SAMHSA grants, which is great. But it needs to be billions.
It needs to be billions.
There needs to be access to billions of dollars for schools and communities to truly integrate and create systems and infrastructure.
But Tony, one of the problems is the teachers union. Okay, that union is not going to give these teachers more responsibility.
No, that's what I'm saying is they shouldn't be.
Right.
They shouldn't
there
have.
There should be mental health workers that are on those campuses.
So I wrote in my book that one of the biggest perils that I believe sits on top of Clovis Unified is that with all the money they have sitting in a bank account somewhere, which is a lot. I guarantee you it's a lot.
You bet.
They could have the most state-of-the-art mental health program in the United States.
Yeah.
And instead of kicking problems out of their school to tout the statistics of how great they are, they could be touting the statistics of how great they've been at reintegrating broken and disassociated individuals from trauma.
Right.
This is what we do to help individuals that were told they were no good, they felt no good, they grew up in situations that were extremely highly traumatic. We helped them get here.
Right.
I don't care about the other 99%.
Right.
They're going to show up to school. They're going to take good to study, do their homework, and get good test scores. Right. SATs are going to go up. They're going to go to a college, community college. They're going to be productive members of society. But with all that money, you could create absolutely the most robust mental health infrastructure that allows us to really make a difference in the ones that need it.
Right.
You know, and that doesn't mean I don't care specifically about the 99%. I just know that they're okay.
I know.
And everything I've learned is you can leave the 99 behind to go get the one.
Right.
But that takes money.
It takes a lot of money.
It takes a lot of money because not every school has money like Clovis.
That's exactly right. And it's so good, you know. Tony and I were like the only ones that were just literally up Clovis Unified's ass.
Yeah.
You know, and there's just not enough people that are up their butts anymore.
And you know what? I will say this. It's probably why they don't have me speak there.
Yeah.
I went after them at the what was it, the Department of DOJ speech. 22 at that time, 22 students, fellow students, had passed away from drug overdoses since I graduated, and Clovis Unified did near to nothing to support the problem that was truly inside their schools.
Right.
And I went after them for that. But I will say, if anybody from Clovis Unified hears me, when I critique you as an organization or a school district, it really is because I think we could be doing better.
Of course.
It's not because I don't like you. It's not because I'm not grateful for Mr. Ford and Mr. Fielding and Mr. Gong that kicked me out of class every day, or my Spanish teachers that I loved even though I never paid attention, because Clovis Unified really did offer me an amazing place to learn and be that was safe. Right? They gave me discipline and structure because of the rules that they had. But you know what? We also made a lot of mistakes. You know, we grew up with 10 black people. We never talked about racial issues. We never were vulnerable about situations with mental health. You know, we were so conservative. We really looked down on the gay community, and it took a while for us to break down the stigma behind that. And so when I come at them as an organization, it's like, okay, we've made progress with some of the dress code over being strict. We've made progress with these other situations, maybe with some of the racial stuff in the gay community. But you know what? I think we need to be doing more when it comes to the mental health and substance use, because just kicking kids out of school to support that your school district is one of the best in the country, to me, it's a lie.
It is.
It's a lie I don't want any school district to tell anymore, because when I found out that 68% of kids who use drugs, nicotine products, marijuana, alcohol before the age of 14 have been sexually abused, I looked back at Clark Intermediate School and I said, oh my God, we kicked out so many kids because they didn't fit the Clovis mold. Or as the superintendent told me when I was kicked out of school, Mr. Hoffman, if it walks like a duck, and it talks like a duck, it must be a duck. And I looked at him and I said, what are you talking about? Because it didn't make sense to me, 12 years old. He said, you look like a drug dealer. You talk like a drug dealer. You must be a drug dealer, Mr. Hoffman. This guy had no idea that really what was driving this behavior was my mental health struggles, suicidal ideation, struggling with my relationship with my father, who was a workaholic, who loved me but wasn't there emotionally to support me. And I was looking for validation in my peers. I wasn't a bad kid. I didn't want to hurt anybody. But because I was treated as if I was an outcast, I was then kicked out. Think about the people that they told something very similar to like that was the victim of continual sexual abuse.
Absolutely.
Yep, got a friend. He's gone. Died last year.
You know what I mean? They're on the streets. Many of them now, they end up on the streets. Why? Because the system said,
you're no good.
You're no good.
You're no good.
And they already felt that. And it's like, that's why I come down on them as an organization, because we got to change that.
Right. We have to. We have to. And again, this is going to be guys of your generation that is going to get this done.
Bingo. Yes. And when I do leadership talks, sometimes they want breakouts, and we do leadership talks, and I talk about infrastructure.
Right.
I also say, the first thing I say is, how many individuals in here right now are the ones that you want to help? We look around, there's never anybody in there.
Right.
I say, how can you help me if you don't know what I need?
Right.
Leadership has been constructed as this place where people are better than other people. They get to design what people that aren't as good as you need.
Right.
When in reality, you're creating programs for yourself.
Right.
Not them.
Right.
So you have to start integrating individuals that don't feel like leaders and are disassociated and make them leaders.
Right.
Then I give them an entire graph of a community: hospitals, businesses, rehabs, schools. These are all forms of leadership.
Right.
How do we create infrastructure to help people in need?
Right.
And I say, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What's your goal? One of the kids recently in Oregon said, I want to make it easier for people to get into college. And I said, follow that.
Right.
Whatever you do, you're the one that's going to make that change.
Right.
Why did I get into the work that I'm doing? Because I'm the one that believes it's the work that starts with me to destigmatize mental health and addiction.
You bet.
I don't want you to do that if you don't relate to that.
Right.
You focus on college, you focus on climate change, but it's the younger generation that changed that. Because much of the older generation, Flindt, they're not like you. They don't want to. They don't want to evolve.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And again, as I'm getting older, I mean, I'm really kind of finding my place. I still love everything I do, but I'm finding my place attacking more things like with laws and those kinds of things with Assemblyman Patterson, and kind of going down that road and still out there preaching my ass off. But it's your age group that is really going to make the big difference here. I'm everybody's grandfather's age now, right? I mean, I can still command an audience of people my age, or even in the 50 to 60 age group, But you guys are the ones that are going to have that power to go into those schools to get kids to listen to you. You're the ones that are going to have to. You're going to have to be Flindt. Okay, for a while, and you're gonna have to be badasses, and you're gonna have to go in there, and you're gonna have to do your thing, man.
Sure.
Because the only way to get change done is to be loud about it, And again, we want to do it the right way,
Sure.
right? But I'll tell you what: how many times have we always said we want to do it the right way, and it's taken forever?
Sure.
So if
we've seen that.
You don't shake up the forest, man. Nothing's gonna fall.
Sure. We've seen that with a lot of the racial injustice stuff.
You bet.
You
bet.
You kick the can down the road long enough and you do it slow enough, people start getting sick of waiting.
You bet.
Some people want to see some stuff change, and they want to see it change now. And I get it, because, when we go into these damn neighborhoods that have nothing, I'll be damned if I'll let somebody say they have the same set of choices that I have to make.
No, not everybody has.
And I just want to say, bro, excuse my language, fuck you.
Right.
You don't get it.
Right.
Yeah. You have no idea
right.
what their choices look like compared to the ones that you had structured in your life, right? You got to go to Clovis Unified. You got to go and be a part of a place where fights didn't break out every day, or kids were selling drugs on campus, or your dad was in and out of prison and mom was prostituting while dad was away to bring money and put food on the table. Right. You don't know what that's like. Your choices are totally different, right? It takes people standing up and saying, you know what? We need more money in these neighborhoods. There's plenty of money out there. We need to put that and create more equitable environments where people can have better outcomes.
Absolutely, but even like just working in the addiction field, I hope this makes sense. I'm sorry, but we that are in recovery, we that understand addiction because we lived it, it is extremely difficult to try to explain that to a school district, to explain that to the powers that be that don't understand addiction. Everybody thinks they understand addiction, but they don't.
It's changing. I'm watching it change.
I'm hoping it is.
It is.
I'm hoping
we
it
need to
is.
get out of the office a little more.
No,
or else we need to get out of California, because it's certainly not changing in this valley.
So, and this is where the change is slow. I've been to schools that have meetings now I've been to schools that have been staffed with several master's level clinicians. I've been to schools that have major support teams that are involved. We just were in Oildale, and they have their own team. While it may be understaffed, they are providing things that I usually did not see over the last 13 years.
Right.
Is it everywhere? No. Close to everywhere? No. But I'm at least seeing, when I go to these conferences, the evolvement and understanding about addiction, and then the deployment of these groups and the work that they do in the communities are totally different than what we saw in the past. Even prisons. When I was in prison, they cut all the programs. The only thing you could do was work for the Prison Systems Association, or PIA, whatever it was called, or go to school. They got rid of all the vocational stuff. Right before the pandemic, they were actually getting ready to unroll an entire substance use program that had therapists, counselors, hands at the gate, housing opportunities, continued mental health care and substance use care when they got out, which was, to me, a huge step in the right direction. Right? Because you can't just give somebody a check and let them parole and say, don't come back.
Right. You can't.
Again, that's you hating them.
That's exactly
There's no
right.
moral responsibility on your behalf if that's all you do, and which means you don't want to do the hard work.
Exactly.
So I have seen, I do want to say,
Okay.
I see it. We're just not feeling it.
Right.
You know, because it seems as if we're trending downwards and backwards faster than we are upwards. Yeah. If we didn't have Narcan right now, do you realize that I think the overdoses would be closer to 300,000?
Look, we never talk about the people that overdosed and survived.
That's all I think about. When I hear 100,000, I think to myself,
I think
wow.
that's got to be 300,000.
Yeah.
Because we are so good at not addressing the real shit here. You know, it's...
Yeah, I'm going to drop in the statistic for those wondering what we're talking about. We're talking about the amount of overdose deaths. I mean, it's what is it now, 16 to 45, the number one cause of death in the United States?
Yeah, I heard 15, but the number's floating, 15 to 18 to 45 years old.
Yeah.
It's getting lower and lower.
Right.
So that's the 100+ thousand that we're talking about. That's reported.
That's reported.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and how many minors, we've talked about this, how many minors that have overdosed that information isn't even made public.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're minors.
Because
anyway,
they're minors.
I mean, we could go on for
heck,
1,000 years.
Young man that came in here that we were talking to, that I finally got to meet, that he's wanting to get into this field. We're sitting talking, I'm sharing the war stories. You know, primarily my thing was alcohol. I was telling him, I tried a lot of stuff. I also love very toxic women. He got a chuckle out of that. But trauma bonding, we could go down a whole entire different route there. But he's like, I overdosed on fentanyl 3 times. Dude, it's 20.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah. And it's just the
there was a guy last night
that desire to get back to it, you know, and I asked him about that. Okay, so you Narcan, and he, what's the first thing you want to do? I wanted to go use. I was going through withdrawals.
You bet. Because that's what we all know it. That's what Narcan does. It wipes out the opioid in your system. We don't have anything. We don't have any. That's what we're trying to work with Fresno County right now, is having that system in place when somebody gets released from the hospital after an overdose, where they can go immediately.
No, where they have to go. I'm sorry. This is where I say sometimes you lose your ability to make choices, and it's no longer a right because you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to die.
Right.
So you have to go here.
You have to go here.
If you stay there, that's your choice.
Right.
You can leave.
Right.
And
but you
there are
have to go.
consequences.
But you have to go there. That one I totally agree with.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're gonna. I'm not going to get into that story, but they are going to go use if they're in withdrawals.
Absolutely.
No question.
Absolutely. I've heard plenty of stories where they Narcan them, take them to the hospital, they leave, and they're back in the hospital 2 hours later from another fentanyl overdose.
Exactly.
It's wild. And I'm so glad I've been clean and sober for 15 years. You hear people say, grateful to be an alcoholic, grateful to be a drug addict. I am fucking grateful to be a sober person that struggled with addiction, that lives in long-term recovery, because man, I would not have made it.
I would not have made it.
No way. No way.
I mean, we damn near didn't anyway.
No.
So can you imagine if fentanyl was around?
Yeah. Hey, look, I tell people I didn't choose sobriety. I had a spiritual awakening the day before I was arrested. Something bigger than myself chose me, and I had the balls to say, all right, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
I'm done.
You bet.
I didn't want to do this, but now I see this, I'll stop For you, I'll stop.
You bet.
Yeah.
Boy, we could go on and
Wow.
on forever.
Yeah.
Tony,
Fantastic.
people want to get a hold of you, find out more about everything you're doing. Run it down for them, good
Yeah,
sir.
you can find me on Instagram, probably the easiest way, Tony M. Hoffman. That's where I update most of my stuff. I have a Twitter, but I don't have a cat profile, so I don't really mess around on Twitter and argue about politics. Facebook, Tony Hoffman Speaking. I have a podcast with about 100 episodes. Don't update it much now because of my schedule, but that's one choice on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcast app. You can check out my stuff about my treatment center, phwellness.com. And am I missing anything? No, I'm just grateful to be here. Flindt, I love the shit out of you, man.
Me too,
Jason,
buddy.
same thing. We got to meet a few years ago, and that was a great experience. Flindt and I go back quite a ways.
We do.
I
love you, man.
He was on the mission first, and I got in and said, you know what, I like this mission, and I want to do the same thing. So it's been great to come back here in town and you guys be part of what are the things that I'm doing while I'm here.
Man.
So,
We love you, Tony. Always have, man. You've been such a huge part of this thing. I respect the hell out of you. Just keep doing what you're doing, man, because both you guys, and Matt, you too, sitting down
Yes,
there at
sir.
the end.
Yes,
all
sir.
right?
Off-camera Matt.
Yeah.
Off-camera Matt.
Matt, you want
because-
to pop your head in so people have relevance to know
Yeah,
exactly
give us a little what's up, Matt. Give us a little what's up.
Matt. Yeah, because you know what, guys? You're the ones that are going to be taking this thing and running with it more than ever. So I'm proud of all of you. I really am. Thank you so much.
love you guys. Thanks.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.